Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. I don't actually know what time it is in Uganda, but thank you very much for joining us. And hopefully, you're going to spend about 30 to 40 minutes just chatting a little bit about you, a little bit about your amazing company, a little bit about your plans, and a little bit about your customers. So I think you and I met, gosh, 5 or 6 years ago, first of all at Chocoa, and I was super impressed by what you were trying to do. I wasn't so impressed by your bars at that point, and then I've just been completely blown away by how far, how fast, and how brilliant your bars are. So tell us a bit about, where you came from before then, and a little bit about, sort of the rest of the story behind your company. Okay, Stu.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate it. It's a pleasure as always. Yeah, for those viewers who don't know, Latitude Craft Chocolate, we're a certified B corporation based in Uganda, working now with over 4,000 certified organic cocoa farmers and producing bean to bar chocolate at origin here in Uganda. Where I am, it's evening, but early evening, so we're good. And yeah, our story really comes from like a social impact, economic farmer impact background. So we got really started, myself and a few of my staff working in various smallholder farmer value chains, and kind of stumbled on cocoa as a unique opportunity to, provide transparency for farmers and customers alike, and to translate value from the grocery store down to the farm level. And so we originally got started, as you know, selling beans and providing, cacao to really great chocolate makers around the world. And we decided to start experimenting ourselves as well with making chocolate at origin. So, it started first off as kind of a laboratory experiment to better understand our cacao processing facility, the flavors that we were developing, the quality, without having to send samples abroad. And it pretty quickly spiraled into, making chocolate. And I think, the key throughout, and funny that you mentioned that the bars originally weren't good. Our cacao also originally was not good at all. And part of it is about, a big part of our company is experimentation and learning, and just iterating as quickly as possible. And so, that's what we're able to do on both sides of the business, which is just continuously experiment, fail, improve, and kind of learn by doing, which is kind of the tale of basically everybody in our company.
Yeah, well, no, you've definitely done some pretty amazing iterations. But why Uganda? And how did
Right.
because you're originally from the States, and how did you sort of get from college to, or even before,
Right.
how did you get to where you are now, and why Uganda, and why craft chocolate?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I originally, back in university, studied impact evaluation, economics, basically evaluating different development programs to decide whether they work and whether they're worth the money that's being spent, um, compared to the lives saved, or malaria cases averted, or whatever the metric might be. And so I immediately, I wanted to travel the world. I had saved up, as any recent college grad wants to do, and applied for jobs at the same time, and got a job in Sierra Leone, doing some of this research, working with rural communities there. And that kind of started my entry point into Africa. And that was about 10 or 11 years ago. From Sierra Leone, moved to Zambia and did similar impact evaluation work there, for big foundations, governments, folks who are in the international development sector. And one of my clients at the time was in Uganda, a cotton and sesame processor and trader, working with over 80,000 farmers. And for me, the business model just made sense. People paying, a premium price for sustainably produced garments allows us to pay more to farmers. And we didn't really see that happening, or I didn't see that happening in the cocoa value chain in Uganda. Uganda is an amazing place, super lush, super green. It's perfectly suited to cacao. It's a major coffee producer, but I didn't see a lot of transparent trade value addition happening in the cocoa sector. So sitting at the table, I was in the South Sudan border, where that's where we used to get most of our cotton from back in the day. And I had this idea that I was going to produce a Ugandan chocolate bar. And, obviously everybody was laughing, and I was half joking at the time, to be truthful. And we got down this road of, investing in cacao, learning how to ferment, how to dry, how to produce quality stuff. And it kind of just naturally happened from there. Cocoa, and sorry, dogs in the background. Cocoa, very similar to coffee for me, is interesting in that it allows for that kind of transfer of value, transparent trade proposition. So it's much easier selling point for customers to understand, the cocoa value chain and translating cocoa growing farms to a chocolate bar, as opposed to many other commodities out there where people don't focus on it and they don't really pay for it. So the key for us is like, how can we pay more to farmers? How can we pay them a stable price? And whether that's through selling chocolate to other amazing chocolate makers, or by producing chocolate ourselves, or even cosmetics or any other thing, we're open to it. And so that's kind of how we got down this road.
Why chocolate? So you were doing Plo, and then coffee. Everyone knows about Uganda. As you
Right.
sort of said, Uganda isn't big for chocolate. Were you sort of president of the Chocolate Society at university, or how did you get into?
Nothing.
How did you have this sort of like, this fascination with chocolate? Where did the chocolate?
Absolutely, I absolutely had no background. I was definitely fascinated by the idea. I had some experience in coffee, in processing coffee. I'd evaluated a few cocoa programs in West Africa, not seriously. But, to be honest, it was kind of like the right opportunity. I was at a time in my life when I was thinking about, am I going to go to business school, or am I going to get the Bush MBA and start a business? And if I do that, what am I going to do? And chocolate just seemed like the right mode and method to like dive in and learn and fail potentially, and learn. And yeah, I mean, it's just a really unique opportunity. Like, Uganda is a perfect place for cacao, and yet it's known for its coffee. And so for me, it's all about learning and experimenting. And that's like the fun of, building and starting a business. And so when it came to cacao, and I didn't know anything, Max was one of my first employees. He didn't know anything. He was from cotton. And we just decided, okay, we're going to figure out how to do this and learn. And the more you do it and the more you taste, the more you get obsessed, and you just, can't.
Yeah, it is all
sleep.
about the taste.
Yeah, a lot of it is just time spent and blood, sweat, and tears invested that kind of really gets you passionate about it. In a weird way. And so, I'm just happy that it's like an awesome intersection between, impact and farmers and stuff like that. And also something that, is pretty cool and enjoyable to say that you work in the chocolate business. Definitely, friends.
Yeah, no, really, definitely. Why do you think Uganda, though, took so long to get into chocolate? And even now, it's really you. I mean, there isn't, there are a couple of other makers, a couple of other farmers out there, but you're right. I mean, geographically and, topologically, it should all be absolutely fine. So, why Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire? Why not Uganda?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, where the governments and policymakers decide to invest their time and resources. And so in Uganda, for a long time, that has been coffee. There's a tremendous amount of investment there, and that's kind of the number one priority for, the Ministry of Agriculture and the trajectory. And a lot of farmers are really kind of picking up what is nearest to them, right? If you produce cocoa and you're out in the middle of nowhere, with no other cocoa farmers around you, you only have 1 or 2 acres, you really can't do much. You can't sell your product for a profit because you can't afford to get it to market.
Yeah.
And so these things kind of spiral with clusters. And I think, us getting going, and so part of this means that the volumes aren't super big compared to West Africa. So Uganda in total is about 30,000 metric tons per year of cocoa, which seems like a lot, but in the scheme of things is a small business in West Africa. And so that means that few people really want to invest in setting down roots and building big factories and doing a lot of value addition. And it's really with the kind of rise of the craft chocolate movement, the bean to bar movement, people making machines out of spice grinders and all these other things that's kind of allowed us and a few other makers to get going, without, putting down these mega, tens of millions of dollars of factories.
Yeah. And also, I think you're right. I mean, with the farms, if you've got it there, once you've got the people who know how to do it, and you've also got the infrastructure so that, you've got enough to be able to do the fermentation and everything else, it does make a difference. But there are these clusters that you need to work with. So you've sort of, you mentioned the way you focused on the part of it. And I guess with your hat on as a maker now, you often talk about sustainability, but what do you think resonates with the people who seek out your amazing, everything from your 100% through to your lovely dark milk, through to your wonderful vanilla bars? What is it? Why do you think people are attracted to this, and in particular attracted to your brand?
Yeah, definitely. I think, a lot of it is what we try and do is be true to Uganda and true to origin, not just, everything is sourced and produced here, but also all the way through start to finish, the branding, the people, the flavors, everything that we put together is honest, and it's, it's authentic. And for me, what's always resonated with me about other brands that I enjoy, consuming, is authenticity, and also happiness, and so, of course we have the sustainability, thing pretty down, because we control the entire value chain. And we try our best to sell, and put that story, bring that story to life on the limited space that we have on a wrapper. But really like focusing critically on quality and being creative with the flavors that we have in Uganda, and kind of bringing to life a brand which represents the people and the culture of Uganda, which is, very similar to the bright, exciting illustrations on the packaging. Like that is perfectly emblematic of Ugandan life. And so, yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing achievement to actually sort of, get that sort of packaging and get those sort of bars coming out of Uganda. So hats off again. But
Thanks.
Why do you think somebody would, other than the fact that it's incredibly visually appealing and it does sort of say Uganda and it does say something different, what makes somebody keep coming back, do you think, to your bars? Because we have a lot of customers who love your bars and just keep coming back, whether it's the Rwenzori or the Samaliki, or, they really do.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it I think is about the trust and the understanding of two things. Like first and foremost, that we can rely on these guys to do things the right way, the sustainable, the honest way, to pay people fair wages, to do those kinds of things. And that's trust that we work every day to build with our customers across the value chain. And the second thing is trust that the flavors and the quality that'll be there will be interesting, reliable, and exciting at the same time. And so, on the one hand, we're a craft chocolate company, so we're not really trying to produce the same identical exact bar every single time. We like to embrace the difference in the seasons and the qualities of cacao and stuff like that. But a big part of it is, building trust with the consumer, or the person, to say like, yeah, we trust your taste. We trust your team and your ability to produce a flavor which is interesting and exciting. And that's kind of exactly what we're going for. So I think it's it's consistency and it's trust across the board.
But I think as well, another thing that's very interesting about you guys is I can't think of many other makers who've got what you've got, which is you take the same beans, but you ferment them differently. And I think, if we go back to when I first tasted your bars 5 or 6 years ago, you could sort of see the potential, but it didn't you weren't sort of getting the length and the complexity and some of the balance out of it. And I know you work with Daniel Adopti a bit, and it'd be great without giving away any of your great trade secrets. But I think it is fascinating that you do have very different fermentations, and that they're going to create different flavors. So a little bit more about how and why you got into that.
Yeah, and this is probably to comment that there's a tremendous number of different unique factors, and we try and focus as much as
Yeah,
possible on the ones that we can like bite out. Like obviously, there's 2 ingredient chocolate, there's made at origin, there's organic, there's all these kind of things, but we try and simplify. But with regards to the fermentation, I mean that's the really exciting thing about having your fingers in all different parts of the value chain, like from the farm to the finished bar, which is that we can do unique things like this, which is, take cacao from different regions or even from the same region and adjust the fermentation that happens, adjust the drying to achieve different flavor outcomes. And so we try as much as possible to standardize certain fermentation profiles because the cacao is used not just by our own factory, but by other people who kind of rely on those flavors being within a certain degree of parameters. But we can adjust everything from the size of the ferment, so how many kgs are fermenting in one, box, to the number of times we mix it, to the number of days. And what we find is that we get different outcomes. The same cacao tastes different. It has different fruit notes. It has different chocolate notes. They all have some similarities because the planting material and the farmers are, pretty similar across the board. But it's really exciting to be able to tinker with that and bring out certain flavors that we get. So one interesting one that Dan O'Doherty has helped us develop is a small group of farmers actually nearby the fermentation facility in a place called Kasinga, where we've developed, a fermentation profile which suits their cacao and the flavors that are possible there, which are kind of these cinnamon spice notes, which is really cool and exciting. And so it's a unique opportunity. You can not only, connect Ugandan farmers with Ugandan chocolate makers and give them bars that are made at origin, but you can also, control things on the farm in a way, or control things in the processing facility that you wouldn't otherwise be able to tinker with, which is really cool.
I think the interesting about sort of what you're talking about, I think, is in a way that what fermentation can do is bring out all these amazing flavors. And the job of the chocolate maker, in a way, is just to reveal those and give them balance and length. Whereas in mass-produced chocolate, you just take any old commodity, whether it be sugar, whether it be salt, whether it be fat, whether it be vegetable fat, and whether it be commodity cacao, you combine them all, and then you add a bit more sugar, salt, and fat, and that's what you're playing with. You're not trying to bring out the flavor. And I think the amazing thing about what you've done is just really sort of taken good quality beans, great quality beans, showing farmers more to do with them, but really, really help them with the fermentation.
And I mean, it's interesting you say, like, we actually say the same thing about our processing facility as people often say about makers, which is like, if you're a chocolate maker, you take the raw material, or even a chef, and you try and do it justice, right?
Yeah.
You try to bring that thing to life, and you try to give it, everything it needs to show its true flavor. And we actually say the same thing at the fermentation facility. And a lot of it comes down to like just not messing it up. Like the farmer has done a great job. They've done everything they need to on their farm to grow it organically, to grow healthy cacao and stuff like that. It comes to the processing facility. We have our protocols, and like really what we're trying to do is do the farm justice, right? And so if you're a chocolate maker, you're doing the fermentory and the farmer justice. And so it's a cool relationship. And I often say, like, they're really the key determinants when we talk about cocoa flavor, chocolate flavor. It's like the farm, what's going on at the farm, what's going on at the processing facility, and what you're doing in the chocolate factory, the roasting, the conching, and it's how like makers can make crazy different flavors from the same raw material. There's a lot of
but they have to start with a material which has got all those flavors in it. So, so going back to the customers, how much of this and how do you communicate this with your customers?
this is to me, this is the number one challenge of craft chocolate and bean to bar chocolate,
Yeah.
which is communication and getting people to understand. And so I think it's, you know, really, and it's challenging as well for us because we're quite far geographically from where a lot of our chocolate is sold and where the customers are. And so that's a lot of, investment in the packaging and the digital media and stuff like that. But I think, to be honest, the most important thing is to simplify and to boil it down to like the crucial things that people can understand, can digest, because everybody's living a crazy life right now, with a lot of things being thrown at them, from work to personal lives to, the consumer advertising. And so it's like simplifying down to like, we work directly with the farmers, we produce it at origin, with fully Ugandan staff. And, we're about quality, and, trying to focus on those things and bring those stories to life, is the number one challenge of a company, like ours and many in the craft industry.
Yeah, I think one thing we should probably add into this a tasting. So I think next week I'm going to have some of your bars, and you and I will taste them in parallel. And we'll fold that into it. But just going back to, it's probably a bit hard for you because you're sort of, not exactly next to where all your customers are going to be consuming the bars if they're in Europe or the US. But the mainstream chocolate world, mass-produced chocolate, basically finds that most of its customers buy a chocolate bar almost as a snack or as a reward, as a pick-me-up.
Yeah.
And they're often actually not shared with other people. They're basically had at someone's desk, they're had in the afternoon, but they're very much, about the snack, the reward, the energy fix.
Yeah.
A lot of craft chocolate makers sort of think that actually their product isn't necessarily a substitute for that. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but then I suppose my question is, how and why do you think people consume your chocolate? Not in the sense that they know it's sustainable, not in the sense they know it's ethical, but more,
Right.
what's the occasion
Right. I see.
That they're going for?
Yeah. Look, like my, as we were discussing before, my kind of mentality and approach really is to make sustainability affordable and make quality affordable for people. And so in that regard, like, I don't have a problem with this concept, like meeting the customer and the consumer where they are. Like, people see it as a treat. They see it as something they want to buy for their kid or something, like just a sugar fix or something like that. As long as, it's good quality chocolate and sustainable, I don't have an issue with that, right? There are going to be many people, and I think the majority of craft chocolate consumers consume chocolate like they consume wine, which is like really indulging and thinking about it and tasting slowly and understanding and trying to dig deeper, which is incredibly exciting. And I think that's also what most makers do and most connoisseurs do. But I don't expect everybody to be like that. And we can't. I mean, I think it's a little bit unrealistic. And so we're, our goal and, my like success would be being able to merge those two. So the people who enjoy for the flavor and want to savor it and, bring it at the end of the meal as a, gift at dinner, versus those who need everyday chocolate just to sustain themselves and their sanity. And so I think it's a little bit of a mix of both for us. And we're just the mass market, and the kind of history and kind of embedded, um, you know, everything about the big chocolate market, like that's just not going to change overnight. So how can we find a way to pave a middle ground, so that we can access both sides of that marketplace and of that coin.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I
Well, I'm
agree.
sorry. Just the reality of like the coffee and the wine and the chocolate industry, and even the garment industry. Like, majority of people, you know, aren't as technical as the makers of those products. They like what they like, and they can be as sophisticated of not or not about their palate and their taste, and that shouldn't matter, right? Like, as long as you like what you like and you're happy about what you're consuming and you're being a conscientious consumer, like, that's exciting to me. And I think yeah, I mean, there's a time and a place for every kind of product, including the super sweet ones.
Yeah, I think I think that insight about the super sweet, I think, is where chocolate has a bigger challenge. I'm not in any way disagreeing with what you're saying, because I think you do have to sort of go to where the customer is. But I think if you just take coffee as an example, the great thing about coffee is it's an upgrade. If you drink coffee in the morning, it's not impossible to sort of, you don't really change the habit if you move up instant towards, Starbucks or Costas, and then
Right.
it's a short step to go to specialty. But it's the same sort of habit. It's the same upgrade. It's the same. You need your caffeine fix. You do it in the mornings. You do it in the afternoons. Similarly, if you go out and you have a beer in a pub, it's an upgrade from a classic beer to being some sort of craft beer. I think, as you sort of say, that one of the challenges is that craft chocolate's very much positioned itself as actually a very different product. If the reason why people like coffee is partly because of caffeine, the reason why people like booze is alcohol is partly because of booze. Unfortunately, the reason why a lot of people like chocolate is because of sugar, and chocolate treats sugar in a different way. It treats it as something to bring out the flavor, and I mean, I think there are some encouraging examples. And I think one thing that's interesting is I think you're looking at some different bar formats, and maybe we should talk a bit about those. But, I think that, I mean, in the craft chocolate world, we tend to be a little bit dismissive of the raw chocolate world, because we think that it's a misnomer, and, technically it is a misnomer. There's no such thing as raw chocolate and everything else like that, because you have to ferment it and it has to go at a certain heat, and it's not going to be, you germinate the cocoa seeds. They can't be germinated anymore because they're cocoa beans, etc. But well, I think what they did get right is that they basically gave people an excuse to upgrade their chocolate.
Yeah.
So you go to a health food store, what they're trying to do is get you to actually feel it's okay to have a bar of chocolate as a healthy snack. And, they're taking snacking and trying to do that. Now, I think we may have to think a little bit about what we do with that. But, you're already sort of halfway there with your Sim Sim bar, I sort of think. That's a great product. It's fun. It's great.
Right.
Getting into it.
And we actually, it's an interesting conundrum that we have as well, because we do sell a lot in East Africa and in Uganda and Kenya, hopefully soon Rwanda. And this East African market is not a market for bitter products. It is a, tea drinking area where there are 3 to 4 spoonfuls worth of sugar that go into people's tea. And so we're, right now thinking about how can we, walk this tightrope and make more interesting, creative, like sweeter products that still capture the, ethos and the mission and the concept of using Ugandan flavors, but, that are fun and more, kids sweet friendly, and also more East African friendly.
But I think you've sort of actually hit the nub of that, which is that the big difference between scoffing and savoring is not just the sugar. So scoffing is about the upfront hit you get on the tastes, which you can dislike, which is what bitterness is about. Or you can be very sort of, shocked by it if it's too sour. But sweetness, it hits you in like literally a tenth of a second. And then, as you sort of said, the trick is actually to not just have sweetness, because that's what confectionery is. What you also want is flavor and length. And that's what you get out of your great chocolates, but also by having these interesting different ingredients. And I think that maybe the way through to sort of thread the needle in the end is actually that what we may need to do is to compromise a bit on the sweetness early on, but then also not compromise on the fact that you want to savor those bars, that they've got length.
Yeah.
Because then you won't eat tons of them. It won't be as unhealthy. And you will be savoring and you'll be thinking about the ingredients and not just commoditizing them.
Yeah, definitely.
So
definitely,
more bars. So more Ugandan origin bars, please.
Yeah.
Would be good there. So what else are you planning on next? What else can you share with us? If you know more trips to Europe, I hope we're trying to get you over for some of those. We'll do a tasting with you when we get you over here. And I loved some of the new bars you brought out last year. I think your white is absolutely outstanding. I'm delighted you've done 100% just to sort of like knock everything else on its head.
Yeah.
And you've got some limited edition bars. I think you were sort of saying you've got this new fermentation.
Yeah. So we're doing a lot of experimenting. So we have a couple of things going on. Limited edition wise, we have a really nice like cardamom milk chocolate bar with biscuit in it, which is like really popular locally, that we've released in Uganda and hope to kind of bring to the market, outside of Uganda in the next year.
Get us some. We'll take some.
Yeah.
Send us.
It's really fun. And we actually, we were doing a tour of some of the cacao farms and saw people growing cardamom in their farms and just thought it's the perfect match. So we started producing it's a dark milk, but it's a milk chocolate with a nice cardamom spice.
Chai-like.
What's that?
Chai-like.
Yeah, a bit of a spice to it, but still, it's a sweet. We're looking for unique milk chocolate bars that we can bring out. So just to spice up our lineup.
Get us some. We'll definitely take some. Whatever you've got. We can take it.
We have Uganda has an absurd amount of mangoes and bananas. So we're right now working. We had a limited edition that went out with just a mango white chocolate with some local cinnamon on it, which was really nice. And we're kind of tinkering with a banana chocolate of some sort. There's like bananas that's Uganda's thing, sweet and savory bananas. So we have these dried plantain like chips that we're starting to work into our milk chocolate and see how that goes.
What about flipping it? Would you ever do, if you had a depositor, would you ever try and do like, chocolate covered mango bits or chocolate covered plantain crisps?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And we have a lot of really great dried fruit companies here that we've been talking to. So it's definitely an opportunity. I think, it's something that we're looking at for sure. I think, it's really challenging. One of the challenging things about producing at origin is the humidity and managing the humidity, and especially when it comes to crunch and salt. Salt tends to just disappear into liquid in front of your eyes sometimes, and crunch tends to wane pretty quickly if you're not quick about packaging it. So it's something that we're trying to figure out how to handle.
So that's another reason to stick with the bars for the short term.
Yeah, it's also just logistics wise, bars are much easier for us to push out and ship and stuff like that. But we'll see if we can put together some dried mango or gonja chips.
If you can do any of them, we'll take them in small batches and definitely try and do some stuff with them. So we'd love to do that. And then as a sort of wrap up, so now that we're finally able to travel again, what are your travel plans? But also, can you think of like 3 suggestions for people if they could come to Uganda? Obviously, one of them is to go and visit you. But what are another couple of suggestions? Where are some of your favorite watering holes or some of your favorite sites to see or places to visit?
Yeah, definitely. My travel plan. So, here we're still getting into the second season here, the second harvest. So I'm around for a while, and then summertime probably head up to Europe and do the rounds, visiting some factories and hopefully some conferences. But in Uganda for now, if you're coming to Uganda, so we do organize tours. So we're pretty well versed. Basically combination learn about cacao, coffee, vanilla, and see all the sights and sounds. So if you come to Uganda, like, you can't miss either visiting the chimpanzees, the gorillas in their natural habitat, which is really amazing, and exciting. There's Murchison Falls. There's the source of the Nile. You can do whitewater kayaking and rafting on the Nile, which is really exciting. As far as watering holes, man, Kampala is a restaurant haven. There's plenty of really excellent, great restaurants here. People doing really great things. There's a great coffee roastery called Great Lakes Coffee that runs a cafe and shop. There's just no shortage. It's incredible how many people from around the world and even locals have like started restaurants here. You won't have a million of everything, but you will have 2 to 3 really excellent restaurants in each category. So Kampala is also really known for excellent Indian food because of the Indian population that's been here for ages. So Copper Chimney, far and away, best Indian food in Kampala. That's my go-to if you come to Kampala. Yeah, but we'd love to have you. I mean, you share my contact. Any folks who want to come by, see cacao.
There's a link on the website actually. Book the course.
Yeah.
We'll put it up on.
We're happy to have you time.
But look, well, thank you very, very much. We are going to tack on to this, you and I doing a tasting of your bars and you telling me about the different stories behind them. So we'll do that next week at some point. I'll get all the bars up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold you to getting some of those limited edition bars, even if it's a couple of hundred bars only. And I love the sound of the cardamom one. I love the sound of the biscuit one too.